Welcome back to War Room 3 again. For our next topic, EMF radiation, how to reduce the hidden burden to regenerative sleep. Let us invite Mr. Patrick Van der Berg on stage. Mr. Patrick is the director of Joe Vitale Academy, international and manages countries outside Europe. He's a geobiology course director and teaches doctors, therapists, building professionals and other people how to access homes for radiation and incorporate biological mitigation, promoting a holistic approach to health. Patrick assists new Joe Vitale offices globally by providing consultant training and setting up new schools. Patrick was a pilot and flew commercially. He studied various complementary health approaches, including naturopathy, nutrition, electroacupuncture, and pulse magnetic field therapy. He has been involved in the assessment and successful updating of many homes, assisting builders and architects in building healthier, radiation-free homes. He's a speaker on the subject of radiation protection and author for various well-respected magazines. Let's welcome Mr. Patrick Van der Berg. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate you investing the time to learn something about this subject. Of course, not only could you have done something else with your morning this morning, but you being here also shows me a commitment to learning more, to not just help yourself but also family members and hopefully patients as well. What you'll get from me is that by the end of this presentation, I would hope for you to be more educated on how radiation affects us and which part of life needs to be addressed. I hope to instill on you the understanding of which part of a life should be improved when it comes to radiation. And we'll end with basically a list of little things you can do yourself at home tonight, or little things you could advise people to do in reducing radiation. Okay, so the subject of radiation. You can't see radiation, you certainly can't smell it, so it's hard to imagine what this radiation subject is. So before I start talking about it, I think it's probably good to show you a little video. What you see in this video, just in case the audio goes past you, what you're going to see in this video is a situation that we find in 95% of homes, or bedrooms more specifically, that we go into. And that has to do with the electric field exposure that you get from wiring that's sitting inside the walls. As soon as there's voltage, an electric field comes out, and it pulses, 50 hertz, 60 hertz a second, depending which country that you're in. In this video, you see a bedroom setup, which is actually in our school in Austria, just to show the students. And in this video, we have a gentleman lying in the bed, and we measure on the foot the electric field exposure. And as you'll notice, when the light next to the bed is turned off and on, this makes no difference, because it's the wiring in the wall that's already enough problems. A special switch is then activated, which monitors the usage of electricity, and when no electricity is used, the switch cuts the power, and it actually removes the electricity from the wiring in the wall. And we then will see that the electric fields are removed. So just to give you a little bit more of an understanding before we get into the nitty-gritty, so to speak.
Yeah, runter. Okay. So this is the situation normal in all the houses without a demand switch, that you have the current on the wire.
The electric fields.
If you have the light on or off, it doesn't matter. So we have to find a place and figure out which wire makes the problem, which fuses, yeah, and so that we can tell the electrician where he should put the demand switch. Jetzt aktivieren wir. Now we activate, yeah, and when we shut the light off, so go to sleep, it takes about 1 to 2 seconds, and now we get the electricity off the bed or out of the bed. Yeah? So, and it's disturbing the whole nerve system. Mm-hmm. So everything, I told you, everything is working from our computer over the nerve system to the rest of the body.
If you have 300 or this, then I'm knocking down those receptors. So of course that we're going to have cardiovascular problems, neurological problems. I didn't mention this, but the two main causes of death in the whole world is cardiac problems, and if you see cardiac problems, the cardiovascular system have his gated voltage channels, and neurological problems, the same channels. I mean, different. There's 149 different varieties of those channels, but those are the same channels. They cannot pick electricity, because if they pick electricity, I can tell you, they're gonna stop functioning well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope that shows you a little insight in just one of the things that we deal with on a regular basis. So a little bit of history about us. GeoVital is originally a naturopathic health clinic based in Austria. These are our facilities over there. The building on the left has the clinic in it and the academy on top. And on the building to the right, we have our mental health wing where we do group counseling, marriage counseling, those sorts of things. The bottom section is where our toxin-free mattresses are produced. Now, the story of GeoVital started a long time ago, where basically we realized in the clinic that we can do wonderful things to help people with their health in a natural way, but if we didn't go to people's homes and protected or updated this bedroom, these people were coming back 6 or 12 months later with similar complaints. And so this is what triggered the interest. We started investigating the homes of patients, and we started to see, well, what could be improved there? And in our experience, there we go, yep. In our experience, there were 3 subjects that had the single biggest impact on the patients with the chronic health issues. And of course, there's lots of things you can do to improve the quality of a home and especially a bedroom. But in our experience, these 3 subjects had the single biggest impact. There were electronic pollution, so that's the radiation we get from the wiring, the power lines running up and down the street. Of course, these transmission lines, the big towers that most people are aware of, is probably not such a great idea to sleep under or near. But also the mobile phone towers and the airport navigation and Bluetooth and all that sort of stuff, the electronic pollution. Secondly, geopathic stress, which is excesses of natural radiation, which is a subject in its own, which we can cover another time. And thirdly, those mattresses that people are in such close contact with all the time. Most mattresses are really made inexpensively and marketed very, very well, but with very little insight on, how health could be affected by it, and it's something that we investigated. Now, in relation to this electronic pollution, there is an absolutely enormous amount of research that links electronic pollution exposure with effects on health or increased risk of health issues. There's also an equal amount of data that disputes that, as it always is. And it's interesting to note, if we look at the funding of various research, that those pieces of research funded by the telecommunications industry tends to find there's no problem with phone towers, where privately funded research tends to prove the opposite. Now, I'm not going to talk all that long about radiation research. I've got a very good source I can send you through. You can dig through that at your heart's content later. But just to highlight just a couple. This particular research, melatonin was seen to be blocked in its natural anti-cancer action with a magnetic field exposure of just 2 milligauss and up. Milligauss is an expression of magnetic field strength. In most countries, the allowable government exposure limit for this is 1,000 milligauss. Just to put it in perspective of how little we're talking about that already has biological effects. This particular one has to do with a medication called tamoxifen, which is popular in breast cancer approaches, and it seemed to be rendered useless when exposed to 6 milligauss and up. This particular one was about 2 schools where they measured the radio frequency radiation coming in, and at levels that we would typically find in homes as well. And it was shown that the school with more exposure than the other, the markers for diabetes were significantly higher. There's also much research on the health effects and fertility issues with radiation exposure. This particular one There was a fertility clinic, a male fertility clinic. They asked the gentleman over there, how much hours of exposure do you have to a mobile phone? And they basically just ticked the box. 0 to 2 hours, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8 hours a day. So let's assume that that's not talk time. And they then compared it with the sperm samples that they had on file, and it matched perfectly. The more exposure, the worse the samples were. There's also a lot of research on childhood leukemia from various countries, Japan, Australia, linking exposures of 4 milligauss and up to an increased likelihood of leukemia. Recently I bumped into some study that suggested they looked at the distance that a child or a home had to be away from the big transmission lines. And it highlighted that between 0 and 600 meters difference, I could be a few percentages off, but I think it was 115% more cases of childhood leukemia compared with the control group who was nowhere near transmission lines. But I would have kind of expected that. You may have expected that as well. What surprised me is that there was a second category which was 600 to 1200 meters, and in that category there was still 74% increase to childhood leukemia. Which I think is also a combination with the lines in the street. That's just a personal interpretation. There's also research on the autism spectrum disorders and them being linked to radiation exposure, especially radio frequency radiation. And there's also research on the effects of plants, so it's not just subjective, but also plants seem to be affected. And there is such a thing as electrohypersensitivity. Electrohypersensitivity can vary from getting a headache when you're on the phone to not being able to go into a public library because the Wi-Fi is on. So there's people that are greatly affected by this. There was a study done, which is not on this list, where they put a decent group of people through a study. Half of the group was self-proclaimed to be electrohypersensitive. The other half had never heard of the concept. They were put in a low radiation room and subjected for half an hour to nothing except for two minutes. They would expose them to a base station of a cordless phone being turned on, something you probably have in your house. This thing was activated without them knowing, and they were rigged up with various suction caps, and they were recording their body functions. They were actually going out to see if they could find if a change in heart rate variability would be a good diagnostic point for electrohypersensitivity. What instead they end up demonstrating was that in all these 40 people, the sympathetic nervous system got triggered. And when the doctor later, after the study, who wasn't present at the time, was presented this research and said, well, can you tell us in this half-hour period, where was it where this cordless phone base station was turned on? He was able to identify that for every single person because the sympathetic nervous system got triggered. And of course, I'm speaking to the converted here. Sympathetic nervous system, we get vasoconstriction, blood pressure goes up, our digestion is slowed down. Again, a personal observation. We're always talking about, are we over farming? We're not getting the nutrients from our food anymore. Could it maybe be that we've got all these phone towers everywhere, these directional transmitters, wires everywhere, that maybe we're constantly triggering that sympathetic nervous system and everything down here is just not running at 100% of capacity? Okay, before I go there. A good source of information on this is the Bioinitiative report. I can send you to bioinitiative.org. There you give them your email address, they send you a download link, and you can download a 1,600-page document put together by 29 international authors, amongst which 22 PhDs. And they researched the available research. And so there's a section in there about the blood-brain barrier, and a very interesting work to have a look through. As a PDF, it is an awesome search tool. With Control F, you can load up the search function of your browser or your PDF reader, and you can type in any symptom that you might be interested in. Let's say sleeplessness, and then you click next, and it goes page 700, and you can read the context. And you click next, and you can see where it comes up again. So it's an interesting search tool. Okay, this image shows on the in the middle, brainwave activity when nothing is turned on. On the left side, brainwave activity when there's electric fields or electricity nearby. And on the right side, the brainwave activity when the Wi-Fi is turned on. So we can see that there's biological responses to this. Now the problem is that the exposure limits that governments set are simply too high. And I think what happened in the beginning is that when some governments saw it, and some governments still don't have exposure limits. So those countries that did, they probably said, well, we really got to set some standards for this. How high should that be or how low? Who should we ask? Who did they ask? The telecommunications companies. So they basically had a wish list they could put down. So these exposure limits are way too high. So here we're talking about 10 million microwatts per square meter, which is an expression of power density of, let's say, wireless technology. These are a list of health issues at levels lower than that. The peer-reviewed research has demonstrated. Also within it, some exposure types. For example, here at 1600 microwatts per meter square, we've got the cordless phone at a distance of 5 meters. Right? So this is all under the government exposure limits. Often in our field we talk about the Salzburg precautionary values. This is not a government standard. In Austria we have the same problems every other country. But what happened in Salzburg a long time ago is that a group of doctors came together, discussed the issue, and they set a recommendation of what the standard should be. And their recommendation was 0.1 microwatts per meter square. Now the most ironic thing about this whole story is that at that level of signal strength, a phone will still work optimally. So we're being exposed to so much for no good reason. I guess it's cheaper to put less towers up that are more powerful than more towers that are not as powerful. Now there is a lot of developments in the world on this subject, mostly having to do with children. So there's countries where mobile phones can be sold to children anymore. There's countries where mobile phones can be advertised to children anymore. Of course, we're getting the SAR labeling that's now being required by law by many countries. There's countries where the use of Wi-Fi, especially in daycare centers and early childhood schools, is being preferred not to be there. The use of low-emission cordless phones is prevalent in Switzerland and Russia. If you're interested in a phone that has low radiation, it's not really low radiation, but most cordless phones, when you put the thing on the receiver or on the base, or you just put it down when there's no call happening, this thing won't shut up. It just keeps transmitting to the base 24 hours a day. It just keeps going. There are these phones, you can Google this, called eco mode phones. And they, when there's no call, they shut up. They don't transmit anymore until one end or the other wants to make a call or receives one, and then they wake up and then the transmitting starts again. In Switzerland, they make a lot of these phones and people are more aware of it. Taiwan has put a law in place that if parents give an electronic device to an under 2-year-old, they could be met with a hefty fine in the thousands of dollars. We certainly also see a change. I mean, we've been doing this for 35 years, but we're getting more and more involved in the shielding of entire homes. We're involved with builders. We often, with existing homes, the sleeping area is always the most important because that's where we rest and regenerate. So it's often the bedrooms that are taken care of, but we're involved now with more homes being shielded completely. So not just the bedrooms are great, but the whole house is safe, so to speak. And we're also involved with developers who don't just want to make a pretty apartment to sell that suits the lifestyle, but they want these apartments to also be healthier, which is of course wonderful as a preventative measure, but also many of those are catching on that, hey, this is something people are interested in. And when I'm quoting, to do a job as a builder, I can say the same thing everybody does. I'm dependable, I do good work, I do quality, but let's say our builders go, yeah, and on top of that we can also make your home healthier. And people are listening, so they set themselves apart. This picture here is of 9 apartment buildings with 47 apartments in each building, and we're shielding all of them. A little bit closer to home for myself. I'm from Australia. This is in New Zealand, just across the water for us. This was a home that was being constructed. This had they were using hemp as a building material. It's called hempcrete as an alternative to concrete. A banner was put up. I mean, they investigated, radiation shielding, found us, and anyway, a little banner was put up in the street, which, the media caught on to that, and there was interviews and that sort of stuff. And when this prototype home was eventually, when it was ready and was being sold, the real estate agent commented that they've never had so much traffic on one particular listing in their office as that one. Okay, globally things are changing as well. So here's a print from a magazine called Global Briefing. They report on trends, developments in the world. And anyway, they reported on some work we did with a hotel in Austria. Hoteliers, they realized that there's a change happening. Most people will ring up and they say, "Have you got Wi-Fi?" And they're hoping that they'll say yes. But they realize there's an increasing number of people that ring up with the same question, but they ask it differently. They say, "Have you got Wi-Fi?" Because they're hoping for a no. And realizing that, of course, the bulk of people want Wi-Fi. We want to do our work, send our emails, watch the videos, all that sort of stuff. They couldn't possibly turn the Wi-Fi off. But they recognize they have this market. And so in this hotel, we shielded a room. The room is shielded, the wiring is taken care of, there's shielding fabric on the windows, so the radio frequency radiation is kept at bay. Geopathic stress is addressed, and it's got one of our toxin-free mattresses in there. So people that are traveling, when they book, they just request that room and they go into the GeoVital room. And they charge the same price for that room as well, which is lovely. Okay, now when it comes to your understanding of radiation, that's where I'm trying to get a little fun with this. Your effectiveness in terms of making a difference in your life or other people's lives depends on how much you understand of this. So, when it comes to understanding radiation exposure, you could be a bungler. Somebody who doesn't understand radiation, doesn't even know that it's a problem, and they just get exposed by all the little things that they buy. You could also be the stumbler. The stumbler is somebody who knows that radiation is not good for you, but they have no idea how to actually deal with it and how to actually deal with it where it matters most. And so they tend to find themselves in the unwanted possession of many gadgets and things you can buy on the internet with wonderful promises and no guarantees, things you can stick on the back of your phone or place on your coffee room table, and miraculously your home or the problem is neutralized, harmonized, balanced, these sort of vague terms. So what I'm aiming to do here with you guys is that I'm trying to make you more of a detective. Somebody who understands the problem of radiation and understands the logic of dealing with this. Okay, so there's different types of radiation. So I'm going to give you a crash course so you'll be able to speak about this with a lot more authority. All right, so we have high frequency electromagnetic radiation or radio frequency radiation. Then we have low frequency magnetic fields and low frequency electric fields. So I'm going to just go over those quickly, just keeping an eye on the time. All right, so high frequency radiation is everything that travels through the air. So that's the mobile phone towers, it is Wi-Fi, it's Bluetooth, it's airport navigation, it's radar, baby monitors, all that stuff that travels through the airs without cables, basically. All right, so in this picture, this is a street in Melbourne, and we've got a little street power lines over there, or local distribution lines as they're called. And so in this first pole over there seems a little bit bigger. It's because there's a mobile phone tower strapped to the top. Now they're getting cleverer in making these things less obvious, right? So these panels, there's 3 panels up there, they're very close together, so it just looks like a pole, I guess, instead of an obvious phone tower. Especially in New Zealand, they can extend any light post in the street with a phone tower. So one day you're sitting in your lounge room and all of a sudden there's a mobile phone tower staring you right in the face. So they're getting cleverer in hiding these things. Of course, also organizations that need funding, and they've got something tall or tall roof, they can earn a little bit of money for having a phone tower on their roof. This might be in the, excuse me, not doing it in ringgits, but let's say $10,000, $20,000 or something to have per year to have a tower on your roof. And so unknowingly they're exposing their neighbors to, of course, more radiation, which I thought was nice and ironic given the sign at the front, love your neighbor. Okay, so we're going to have a little game over here. So who can pick where the mobile phone towers are here? Just point. It's we can't hear what you're saying probably. So where in this picture are the phone towers? Any takers? No, I have to do some training with you. It's on the church tower over there. They've very nicely camouflaged them in a brick pattern, so they're not as obvious. Power companies are often in bed with telecommunications companies, so what we're starting to see now as well is that transmission lines, as if they weren't bad enough already, they now also have these mobile phone transmitters strapped to the top of them, so that we get a combined problem. And something that's coming that they're working on is called air gig, where the local distribution lines can have transmitters put on the top of the poles, and they're going to use the radiation of the local distribution lines to transmit Wi-Fi at very high frequencies. This one is particularly interesting. Of course, we don't necessarily notice these hidden towers either. You know, we end up visiting a patient and assessing and figuring this stuff out. So where here do you think the mobile phone tower is? Any ideas? Yeah. It's that little chimney on the top. Looks a little different than the other one, but you know, that was what was bothering our patient. Queensland, Australia, is it getting more obvious? Come on, show me a few fingers. Okay, we've got a nice concrete pole disguised as a palm tree. Notice on there the vertical panels, which we're familiar with, but also the round drum. I'll be explaining more about those in a minute. Okay, this is here in Kuala Lumpur. A little bit of a vague photo because we were driving, it was raining, and it's at a great distance. This is from the airport on the way to KL. Of course, I'm talking about the kind of a little bit too perfect tree, maybe. Right, so you can see this on the way to the airport, all strapped with phone towers and directional transmitters, again, those round drums. Now, when we talk about phone towers, we're always talking about these vertical panels, and nobody actually talks about these round drums. So the vertical panel is what talks to the handset, that talks to your phone. And so let's say there's 1,000 people around this tower, and they're all watching a YouTube video. And all this data needs to go to this tower, right? But all this information, most towers don't have data connected to them. They have electricity connected to them. So what they do is they have to get the data from somewhere else. And that's what those round drums are for. That's how the radiation or the signal from one tower gets beamed to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, all at the speed of light until you get to a tower that actually has data connected to it. So these round drums are often ignored in this problem. And this is the problem what we're concerned about. So you might be looking at the tower that might be relatively near you and could be concerned about it, but the chances are that that tower is connected with another tower and they're talking to each other at very high frequencies. And so, you know, a phone call might be happening in town D to somebody in town A, but this whole pattern of high frequency radiation is causing exposure everywhere. You can be nowhere near a phone tower and you're caught in a crossfire. I've had patients like this have repeated headaches all the time. They shield their bedroom, which is not all that difficult, and 2 weeks later you get a phone call, my headaches are gone. And so this building, like the two brown buildings on the top there, you know, you might be looking, oh, I've got a tower over there, but it's actually the one furthest away that's trying to talk to you, or talk to that tower that's causing a major burden as well. And this technology is getting cheaper and cheaper. Okay, in the high frequency radiation story, of course, we should also touch about this on the smart meter. Are they being introduced in Malaysia just yet? Don't know, no idea. A smart meter is a meter that measures your electrical consumption. You know, the old meters had those spinning discs in it. These have let's say a mobile phone or router built into it, and it monitors your usage of electricity. There's lots of concerns in regards to privacy on this matter, because every appliance in your house uses electricity with a certain signature, they call that. And basically, without having a video camera in your home, it is said that the signature of the electricity that is being used, they can identify what's actually running. So a coffee machine has a different signature to an air conditioner or a vacuum cleaner, those sorts of things. And so the people concerned about privacy are concerned, and we can already see that power companies are selling this information to third parties so they can market better to you. That, you know, let's say somebody has a busy Saturday night and he's supposed to work on Sunday morning. Supposed to start at 9, a little bit of trouble getting out of bed, turns up at 10 o'clock, says, oh, sorry, I overslept. And the boss might be able to say, well, that's a nice story, but your coffee machine went on at 7:30, so clearly somebody was awake. Where this smart meter thing is coming from and where it's going is that this thing is able to talk to more and more appliances in your house. The technology is already in place, just the talking might not be happening yet. We already see this in other countries, that there's different power plans that are offered. So let's say if you say, well, listen, I'm not really home Monday to Friday, I work, I'm in the office, I'm only home at night, and in the weekend I'm home, I'm going to sign up for the most economical power plan, because I agree not to use large appliances during the day, Monday to Friday. And so you've got a Wednesday off, and you've got some friends coming to visit, it's a bit hot, you turn the air conditioning on, and your smart meter will turn it off for you because you didn't agree to that. So that's where this is going. But besides that, it is like having another Wi-Fi router on your house. It increases the radio frequency radiation. So we see a lot of people, the initial symptoms seem to be headaches and ringing ears. And it tends to be about 2 to 3 weeks after the installation of the meter. And then people notice something is amiss, and a lot of people avoid the installation of these things now, and they check their meter box outside, and behold, a smart meter was put in. Okay, then of course there's also many personal devices that we all have or could purchase. Of course we've got the mobile phones and the tablets. We've got the baby monitors, which are actually more powerful than smart meters, which is interesting. Fitness monitors, which I just think is hilarious, because radio frequency radiation is linked to raising blood pressure. So what shall we measure our blood pressure with? Something that's wireless. It's funny. There's also toys. Hello Barbie. Mattel, who makes Barbie, bless them, they talk to their consumer because they're losing a lot of sales. And so they talk to all these little girls and they said, well, what would you like? What kind of a Barbie? What would you like to do with Barbie? And many of them said, you know what? I just wish I could talk to Barbie. Like a real conversation. So Mattel, bless them, they actually listened to their consumer and they created that. They created Hello Barbie. Hello Barbie is like Siri on your phone. You can ask it questions and it tells you things back. It's got like 8,000 conversation streams pre-programmed in it. But the problem is it uses Wi-Fi. And so the Wi-Fi talks to the router loads your conversation up to a company in America which nobody knows. And so the privacy concerns are what's happening with that stuff. Can what you said when you were 4, can that bite you on the behind when you're trying to run for president, 40 years later? But of course our problem with this is that we've got the Wi-Fi radiation exposure. And of course these kids lean into this thing just to make sure she listens. And it's very cute. I haven't got time to show it here today, but Google GeoVital, Hello Barbie, or radiation. You'll get a video, and very, very cute to see. I love this doll. It's just so sad. It's so bad. In-house monitoring equipment that's coming as well. Things for humidity, security, of course. We already see a lot of that. But garden monitoring equipment is coming as well. You can have 17 plant pots in your backyard. You can have a wireless sensor, which is solar powered. You don't even have to look after it. All 17 plant pots will be measuring nutrition, moisture levels. And you could be at work 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and just because it's important, you're notified that plant pot number 15 really needs nutrients and water. Okay, then there's also gadgets for the smartphones, and the worst 2 things I have seen so far, and I'm sure they'll come up with more, is the iPotty and the swipe and feed. So you can strap an iPad in front of your child and let it entertain itself while it's going to the toilet, and the swipe and feed must be the worst invention I've ever noticed. Baby bottle. So forbid that you might have a bonding moment with your child. You can strap the smart meter into the swipe and feed, rest it on their chest, and check your social media status. Right? Which is, of course, atrocious. And of course, this has got to end as well. Right? There's lots of research with fertility issues, so strapping these things to our reproductive areas really doesn't make much sense. Of course, male fertility, when we talk about preconception care, we really tend to talk about a 4-month period because sperm cells take 4 months to mature. With, of course, women, eggs are in place basically from day 1. And so preconception care really starts at their own conception. It's my personal opinion that I think all bedrooms of girls should be shielded. Because, everybody in this room, we grew up with none of this stuff around. You know, our cells multiplied and we grew and it happened, but kids that are born now, they're being born into this soup and we have no idea what we're actually doing to our cells. And there's a lot of people concerned about DNA damage. And of course, strapping into a bra, of course, it's ludicrous. All right, so waking up our detective a little bit. So there's lots of little gadgets that you can buy for phones. And I'm constantly surprised how many well-educated people fall for this stuff. Radiation is a physical force. If you look at a phone, you can't stick something small somewhere on the phone and expect it to do with the radiation, something that it does, or you can't expect it to do anything to the radiation that's there. You can't block it, it's not a shield. So anyway, we had these questions from patients saying, I can't make a phone call anymore without getting a headache. So we came up with this idea of a shielding pouch. Actually got one here. All right, so in this pouch, there's 2 layers of shielded fabric. You put the phone in the outside pocket, so it is able to maintain its signal from the other side. And in the interim, you've got 2 layers of shielded fabric on one side of your phone. So if it has to be in your pocket, or if it has to be in a purse, you can position that shielded fabric in the middle. When you get a call, of course you'd answer it, but then you can put the pouch on top. And if you haven't got privacy enough to do speakerphone, which is always better, you can also talk with it. Because the sound will go through, but the radiation is being shielded back. I have to say, phones also produce a magnetic field, and you can't shield against that. So it's always better to have it on speakerphone instead. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for our detectives. Okay, so low-frequency magnetic fields. Now, looking at this street, we've got the transmission lines in the distance, and I don't know about the people in this room, but most of the people I talk to would kind of have reservations about having a house near transmission lines. However, the little ones running up and down the street, nobody thinks about those. And they're far closer to your house. And I don't want to get too technical, but these local distribution lines are connected to more and more, lots of electrical systems, the houses themselves. If we have a problem, for example, with a broken neutral in one house, the electrical current will go through the soil or through the water pipes, go back into other houses to make their way back on these local distribution lines. And that can produce magnetic fields in front of those 2 houses or the entire street. So where the big ones are kind of predictable, these ones are unpredictable. And the older the subject, the older the suburb, the more problems we see with that. So I guess the punchline with this is, this stuff needs to be measured before committing to any property, buying or renting. There's an instrument called a Gauss meter. They're not that expensive. If you want a recommendation, just email me. $200 US or something, you've got a reasonable quality Gauss meter where you can measure this with. And the government says 1,000 milligauss is fine. 1 milligauss is where the bad news starts. So in a bedroom, we want to see 0.3. And so that's what you'll be looking for. That's what you want to commit to. So yeah, especially buying a property, that's important. Of course, also in existing properties. Okay, waking up our detective again a little bit. Solar panels. Solar panels are an electrical system. The panels themselves produce electric fields, but they can also produce magnetic fields, especially when there's microinverters in each panel, which is where they're going to, because with microinverters in each panel, if one breaks, the rest keeps working. The oldest systems, I didn't have it. If one panel broke, it had to be fixed. So wonderful as solar panels are for the environment, they may not necessarily be so good for your environment. So you've got to be very careful with how they're installed. Again, we could help with that. And of course, another controversial one is our electric cars. Okay, most automobiles will have some radiation in it. We have an electrical system. We have the distributor doing its job. The driver normally cops a bit of radiation, and the passengers get a lot less exposure. In hybrid and electric cars, it's worse, and it's just as bad in every seat, because you're either sitting in front of the steering wheel or you're sitting on top of the batteries that are being charged. I have patients that say that they were sensitive to radiation, didn't think about it and got a hybrid car, and that's the thing that pushed them over the edge, and now they can't be anywhere with any of this stuff around. They can't go in the library anymore. Shopping centers is a problem. All right, and then finally, we're just going to touch on electric fields. Magnetic fields are caused by a flow of current. So electricity needs to run, needs to flow. Electric fields are caused by voltage. And so if we think about that in your house, let's say if we turned everything off, there would be no flow of current. But you would have voltage everywhere. It's available to you. And so all this wiring will emit electric fields. So we assess that in home situations where, just basically for demonstration purposes, we measure somebody's foot or the big toe to show, look, this stuff is going through the whole of you, because electric fields are about 2 meters, 6 foot in size. And so we have switches that can deal with that once we identify the right circuits, and in a building setup, we can make changes to a house to avoid the pitfalls we find in all the existing homes. Okay, so some of the solutions that we work with, now we don't deal with crystals or dream catchers or anything that you got to take somebody's word for it. We work with verifiable solutions, and I guess what makes us unique is that we're kind of the only ones in this industry that have come from a background of working with patients, not a background of a whiteboard with profit margins and market share and all that sort of stuff. So our patience has always been the benchmark in terms of if something was good enough or not. So we have a circuit cutoff switch, which is a switch that monitors the usage of electricity on a circuit, and when no electricity is being used, the switch cuts the power, and therefore there's no electricity, no electric fields. The trick is, though, you've got to identify the right circuits. And so in Germany, where these switches are heard of, the electricians go around selling them and say, hey, you want to buy one of these circuit cutoff switches because they're healthy for you? Oh, yeah, I've heard that. And so they get one installed, but nobody assessed for the radiation. And most of the time it's been pointless exercise because it's the wrong circuit, it's not enough circuits, and so they get no benefit whatsoever. Shielding paint is another option. This is a paint with predominantly graphite and carbon, and it makes the walls electrically conductive. And so the homeowner, anybody could do this, or you can get a painter in, paint the walls, the ceiling, perhaps the floor. It's a little bit of a separate subject. And you basically create a Faraday's cage, so the radio frequency radiation bounces off that. And shielding is always dampening, so it's not an absolute block. What that means is that you could go into a shielded room, and as I showed you, the level of signal strength needed to get a phone to work is so low. So it may be that a cordless phone still works inside a shielded room. That doesn't say anything about the quality of the shielding. The aim is to have the body exposure. Thank you. All right, so people can do that themselves. We have shielding mesh. We can be put on the floor, on the carpets, that sorts of things, and fabrics that we use on the windows, or to create a canopy out of. So if somebody is renting, that's a better option. Okay, so in new build homes, very exciting territory for us, because if we can avoid these problems to begin with, that would be wonderful. So we do a lot of good work with the wiring, put that in just slightly different, and we work with the electricians to do it just a little smarter than they would normally run, because normally they run it at whatever's convenient for them. We can shield entire homes, from the radio frequency radiation and larger and smaller projects. What we mostly do is retrospective protection, though. So homes, of existing patients. So a canopy could be created, painting the rooms. We're working on the wiring, also create that healthier environment. Okay, just to I got to speed up a little bit. So just to wake up our detective again. With the shielding, we had a lot of phone calls where people say, I've got a smart meter, or my neighbor's got this Wi-Fi and I don't want any. I want to shield this one wall. Right? All right, let me explain. The shielding works on both sides. So if you shield one wall, you might have successfully bounced away the smart meter, but the 3 mobile phone towers that are on that side of your bedroom wall and the 52 smart meters in the rest of the street, they're still coming into that bedroom as they did before, but now they're being reflected in the wall that you've created, and you get them twice. So you might have won on account of the smart meter, but you are far from having created a healthy bedroom. Right? So that's kind of an ill approach. Shielded clothing and bed covers, there's lots of little accessories that you can purchase. We don't really believe in shielded clothing so much because part of your body is still exposed, and so you're still taking on this frequency which stresses the body. So even though fabric is a good idea, given the right performance, it needs to be used appropriately. So a canopy, for example, makes sense, but not a jumper. But some people do have support from that, so we don't knock it completely, but that bedroom should be dealt with because that's the place where the body rests or regenerates. And yeah, of course, not all products are the same. Performance is important. Also, the ingredients used are important. To us, it makes no sense to shield somebody's bedroom with a paint, which helps them against radiation, but the ingredients in the paint now cause another problem. You know, we need solutions, not products. Okay, so summary: low frequency magnetic fields, electric fields we talked about. We talked about high frequency radiation, radio frequency radiation. What we didn't touch on was static charges and geopathic stress. That can be a subject for another time. Mattresses, just real quick. Most mattresses we found have chemicals and toxins in it which cause intolerance reactions with the patients. We do things like muscle testing, electroacupuncture, Vega testing to test and verify these things. Many mattresses have metal in it. Metal attracts the electric fields, makes it worse, and it makes the radio frequency radiation worse from the phone towers and those sorts of things. Also, the coils can be magnetic. So if you grab a compass, you can do this at home, and just place the compass on the bed. You might have to press a little bit through the foam, as your body would do as well. And as you slide this compass around, it shouldn't start disagreeing on where north is. Right? If it starts to deviate by more than 5 degrees, it's an additional stress signal, and we would say that mattress needs to be replaced. Many mattresses build up a static charge, also resonating with phone tower radiation. There's poor oxygenation to the skin. Again, you can test that at home. Just peel the sheets back, place your lips on that mattress, and try and blow air into it, and then suck air back out of it. You know, your skin is your second breathing organ. Your lungs first, skin second. Most mattresses leave much to be desired. There can be a breeding ground for bacteria and fungus. Spinal support. Many manufacturers work on that, but it often leaves to be desired. They're too rigid for the side sleeper, and all of us sleep on our side on occasion. We all roll around. So when we have all this pressure on our shoulder, we get more pressure on respiratory circulation. We need something that has a little bit of give. Covers can often not be washed, which is often a little bit disgusting. And there's many marketing gimmicks that are available, that are pushed. The word natural really doesn't mean anything. Uranium is natural too. We don't make mattresses out of that. Silver, I don't know if that's made it here. Silver is a natural antibiotic, but it doesn't distinguish between good and bad bacteria either. So to sleep on a mattress with silver threads in it is like taking antibiotics all the time, ruin your gut flora. So silver kind of doesn't make an awful lot of sense. All right, so anyway, with our mattresses, the metal-free, the toxin-free, the latex-free, anti-static, high oxygenation, and they have a washable cover that's removable as well. So I guess, what we do, and these services are available, we do home assessments. That's what we do. So we can go into a patient's home, assess what this problem is, and help them with verifiable solutions to deal with these issues. Excitingly enough, we also do training, which is done in Melbourne and is done in Austria. So should you have interest, or if you are too busy with the practice the way it is, but you have a family member, a friend that is a little bit interested in this department, they could come and do training with us, and you could refer the patients to them. I'm happy to come to Kuala Lumpur and help out, which is wonderful. But of course, it would be a lot more cost effective if we had local people here. So please, if you pass that on to other people, that would be great. Okay, I'll skip the little practical example video because we're running a little bit out of time.
Wir sind hier zu Gast beim Pfarrer Hele in Lauterach. Der Herbert, der hat immer ein bisschen Probleme, Kopfschmerzen, Unwohlsein, Kribbeln in die Hände, und da er damals am Sulzberg wohnte, wir das Zimmer dort geschirmt hatten und er also einen tollen Erfolg hatte, jetzt in der Pension hier unten in Lauterach wohnt, im Kloster, hat er hier ein neues Zimmer bekommen und hat also dann so ungefähr ein halbes Jahr nach dem Einzug auch wieder über die gleichen Symptome, also das heißt über die gleichen Beschwerden geklagt, und hatte mich dann angerufen, hat gefragt, du Sascha, kannst du nicht mal kommen? Und wir da nach dem Rechten schauen, da haben wir eine Messung gemacht und haben also große Probleme festgestellt betreffend der Stromsituation, und das wollen wir also heute beheben. Wenn wir es also schon einschalten, dann geht das dementsprechend schon los. Gell? Man sieht also, normalerweise sollte der Zeiger im grünen Bereich sein. Wir sind noch gar nicht an den Wänden dran. Da haben wir schon Belastungen, da rattert schon das Messgerät los. Gell? Und wenn ich also jetzt hier zum Beispiel in den Schlafbereich hineingehe, da haben wir also jede Menge Strom draufstehen. Schaut's. Jetzt machen wir die Lautstärke ein bisschen niedriger. Gell? Dann greife ich hier oben an den Draht ran, ja, und dann sieht man also, wie gleich diese Zahl in die Höhe schießt. Ja, man hat sogar auch ein bisschen Radio im Hintergrund. Und das ist natürlich viel zu viel. Also wir sollten schauen, dass wir Werte nachher bekommen, wenn es ganz gut läuft, dass wir unter 30 drunter sind. Ich weiß noch nicht, ob es genau klappt. Gell? Aber wir bemühen uns. Abgeschirmt wird mit einer speziellen Abschirmfarbe. Ja, da ist Graphit drin. Das wiederum bewirkt also, dass die Farbe elektrisch leitend ist, dass wir Hochfrequenz und Niederfrequenz abschirmen können. Da ist ein 900 sogar manchmal. So, und jetzt gehen wir hinein. Mario, kannst du uns gerade ein bisschen aufmachen? Sind wir schon mal bei 80, 90. Ja. Also bis auf 30 kommen wir jetzt nicht runter im Maximum. Gell? Ja. Und der Herbert, der darf jetzt auch nochmal hingreifen. Vorne an das Drähdle. Ja. Genau. Ja. So.
23.
Also,
super.
Da haben wir jetzt 20, ja, also super Werte.
So, gut so.
Super Werte, genau so wie wir es eigentlich haben wollen. Ja?
Ja, prima. Freut mich.
Und wie fühlst du dich? Ja. Wunderbar, ha?
Ja, wunderbar.
Ja.
Just a few little tips that you can do right now, or as soon as you come home. Get rid of your radio alarm clock. They have a transformer in them. They also have a magnetic field around, and it's causing headaches with a lot of people. Just get rid of it. Get a battery-operated radio alarm clock. Mobile phones should stay out of the bedroom. They certainly shouldn't be charging there. And if they have to be in the bedroom because you use them as a clock, you want to put it on flight mode. And don't put it on your pillow, though, arm's length, because it's still an electrical device. No dimmers in the house because they can be problematic. No transformers and power leads, of course, near the bed. Those touch-sensitive lights, you touch them, light goes on, touch them again, go a little brighter. Gorgeous as they are, they have a transformer in them, they're always on, and big magnetic fields, have no room in the bedroom. Your fluorescent energy saver light bulbs, with the twisty-turny tubes, they're the worst in the energy saver family when it comes to magnetic fields and dirty electricity. So non-dimmable LEDs are the best in the energy saver family. Replace a spring-filled mattress with a non-metal mattress, but be careful for intolerances. So it'd be great if you could consider one of ours. A bed frame, you want to have predominantly timber, nuts and bolts, brackets, that's fine, just no big bars of metal because it'll make things worse. Earthing mats, don't know if you've heard of it, this is a sheet people put on their bed that grounds them. There's no problem in using them, but only when the room has been taken care of. If the electric fields are still there and you're grounded lying on top of it, you become the way out and it's actually attracted to you, you make it worse. Again, one of these things that sell well, but maybe not so well thought out. Don't sleep or sit against the meter box, as in the wall. You don't want to sit against it because there's always magnetic fields there. Computer, keep cables away from you. All these things you don't really use all the time, unplug those, get rid of them. Or just put them on a separate board. A laptop, terrible name for it. It should have been called a tabletop. Right? Shouldn't be on your lap, should be in front of you. A good thing to teach children as well. Instead of sitting there like that, lie on the floor, put it in front of you, and sit on the table. Don't sit near dimmable lights, again magnetic fields. If you're building new, A sheet metal roof would be a great idea because it already shields your roof. You just have to worry about the walls, basically. Solar panels, of course, at night they don't do anything because the sun's gone. So ironically, if you wanted solar panels, they'd be better on the bedroom than they would be on your home office. Have a Gauss meter in the family to measure magnetic fields, but do realize its limitations. Cheap meters have a lot of shortcomings, so you need to get the assessment of a professional. And finally, listen to your feelings. If an area feels wrong, it probably is. All right, those are the same things that I showed you. So probably have a couple of minutes for some questions. Any questions?
You're saying you're using the loud speaker when you're talking
On the phone, yeah.
How about using an earphone?
Thanks for asking that. If you plug something in your phone that has an electrical cable that runs from your phone to an earbud, you're not really making any headway because the radiation from the phone runs straight up the cable. So you're not winning there. There are headsets, they call them air tubes. They go through a little speaker that's on your chest, and then basically like a stethoscope, the little air tubes take the sound to your ears. They do have merit. I used to sell them, but they do tend to break every 3-4 months. But they do have merit. But speakerphone makes a lot of sense.
So Bluetooth will be out.
Yeah, same story again. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your attention. Of course, we have information on our website if you'd like to know some more. We have a booth out there. Love to see you. We have actually brought one of our mattresses from Australia for you here to try. So please, when the feet get tired, come and try it out. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.